An NYPD officer tries to save his wife and several others taken hostage by German terrorists during a Christmas party at the Nakatomi Plaza in Los Angeles. Possibly the best action movie ever, Die Hard is up next on Inside Movies.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to Inside Movies. I'm George McHale. This is Murphey. She's
Over
a
here.
comic book writer. That's GMB CHOMICHUK. He's a writer, illustrator. He makes comic books too.
Yeah.
And down below me, that's Andrew Buckley. He's a novelist. Today we're talking Die Hard. I'm psyched. I'm fired up. But we're going to do things a little bit differently because this movie is so awesome. Let's get into the bad first because that's going to be a little bit shorter. What did you guys not like about Die Hard?
It's hard because this one is so baked in nostalgia for me and all these other good things and my like deep and unabiding former crush on Bruce Willis.
Former, really?
Present day Bruce Willis is not the charmer that former Bruce Willis was.
You just
Moonlighting Bruce Willis. Hudson Hawk
Bruce Willis.
Die Hard Bruce Willis.
I don't know. Bruce Willis in red is still quite attractive of a man.
That is true. In the first one, at least. Not the second
Yeah.
one.
We got
Sorry.
two bads. You can see his stunt double, like pretty obviously, and I'm like okay with it when he's like jumping off the building and bouncing off the glass. It's like, all right, maybe they're not really gonna throw Bruce Willis in there. But there was like a scene where he's like fighting a guy on the stairs and he's falling into the stairs. I'm just like, Bruce Willis, you could have landed on those stairs, like Tom Cruise it up a little bit more, man, because that kind of pulled me out of it. And I hate being pulled out of a movie. I want to be invested 100%. I want to go into that reality.
So is that Bruce Willis's fault? I don't think so. That's in the edit, right?
It's the guy they cast. He had like slick back hair. You gotta like match the hairstyles. Like, come on.
Well, no, I'm not. No, I'm saying that you have to edit or cut the movie in such a way that you only see the back or the legs or the whatever, so that you don't make those obvious calls, right? It's a movie that doesn't have too many moments like that. But one of them is like the back of that truck. What was it? You could see that the truck is full of stuff at one point and then it's empty. And there's another scene like that in it. Kind of took me out of the movie.
I love that we get this nitpicky with it, but there's also
you have to be nitpicky.
What you do with this one?
It's pretty great.
When he kills the one guy with the chain and hangs him, the ballet dancer dude, who was the actor in this, when he does that and he sits down against the pole, you can actually see that guy Carl in the background drinking a coffee. He's supposed to be hanging from the ceiling. So there's some weird editing faux pas in this in that movie for sure.
Hans Gruber is awesome. He's great.
Best villain.
Yeah, but he doesn't really sound German. He sounds
his
pretty English.
accent is all over the place. Sometimes he does. Other times you're like, nah, it's just Alan Rickman.
Yeah. But that was my first introduction to Alan Rickman.
Regular voice, and it would have been perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Slip into the German sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not too much. Everything that I find ridiculous in the film, the characters themselves also find ridiculous in the film, and it excuses it for me. And that is such a, it knows that these are ridiculous, impossible. One person should not be able to pull this off. It knows that about itself. And so all the criticisms I have about so many other action movies where they just are trying to drip with cool, Bruce Willis's charisma and his actual cool, right, covers up all that stuff where he's just like, oh man, right, this is a really bad situation. Oh my God, I probably am not going to live through this, but I'm going to try my best, right?
I've got another bad too. The limo driver,
Argyle.
What's he doing down there? He's like the whole movie. He's just chilling in the basement.
He's a kid.
Nobody would be waiting that long. Like, I know he was on the telephone talking to his lady, but
no, you know what he was on was the clock. And he was going to wait down there as long as he needed to because that boy was getting paid by the hour.
That's he was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I just kind of wanted him to like call somebody that like and maybe help things. Like when Bruce Willis is trying to call the cops, he's just hanging out there on the telephone. Like, and why didn't Bruce Willis think to go down and talk to him and go and like make the call down there?
Is that the guy you go to? Like a bunch of terrorists show up and you're gonna go call the limo driver, the 12-year-old limo driver who's downstairs?
George, I'm today years old when I've thought, why didn't he go to the basement and talk to Argyle?
Yeah.
Because he could move through that whole building in the shimmering his way. Oh my damn it, you ruined that movie for I used to like this movie.
He only stayed on the top levels because they shut down all the elevators to go down.
He couldn't get down.
Yeah, they could only travel from 30 up.
Murphy, you've saved the movie for me.
He's not gonna crawl in a fucking air vent all the way down to the basement. I mean, that'd be a hell of a fall there, Greg.
My God.
Anybody else got any bads? Am I the only one that like thought about like some nitpicks?
So the only ones that I have are kind of along the same thing that he was saying, where it would be a piece of dialogue or something that was like something in a character's story that, you know, was said then and was fine or just funny or whatever, but then now you're like, oh, that doesn't age well. But then at the same time, those things are still, so the one that comes to mind is that reporter telling the Mexican woman, I'm gonna get you deported.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like, even if she's a freaking citizen, telling that to someone who's Mexican or, you know, wherever she's from is just it's so awful. And that is
awful, but that's reality. People are awful in reality.
He gets punched out. And then I'm like, okay, so like, yes, they said use this awful thing to like move the story along, but then he did get at least a little bit of retribution for it.
Yeah, he suffers. Everyone bad suffers in this movie, which is kind of a nice.
Which is pretty great.
Yeah, it is pretty good. It started. Okay, one bad thing is that I believe it's my first time experiencing the double ending in an action movie, which then every action movie after it also did, where like everyone's dead, but then the bad guy comes back right at the end. Spoiler if you haven't seen Die Hard, right? Throws the blanket off, the whole thing. Like we see that double ending now for 10 or 15 movies after that. And so one of the bad things about Die Hard is it inspired everyone to rip that moment off.
Also, why did the supposed dead guy still have a gun?
Well, he might have got it on the way downstairs, but he was pretty obviously.
He's a Republican, so from his cold dead hands is the only way they were going to get it from him.
Jeez. I can't think of anything else bad about this. I mean, the stereotypical nerdy dude, I guess. Nerdy terrorist. He got taken out pretty easily by Argyle at the end.
I could have sworn there was going to be a moment because when he was hearing John McCain on the talkie, he was like,
McCain.
McCain?
John McCain. That's
the guy who invented the fries.
I mentioned Republican, and now you're
okay.
I could have sworn I was going to call Rambo Rocky when we were talking about those, and I just right here at the top. I could have sworn that he was going to be like, oh, I know him. Like I ran into him in New York or something because there was like recognition. And then that just never came up again.
That's true. There was a moment of like, there was a thread of a plot between his police self and that other policeman and all that stuff that I felt like there was some draft of it that evaporated somewhere. Yeah, I wanted more of that.
As a kid, I was always really confused because he was he was a New York cop in LA in this one. And then in the second one, he was an LA cop in New York, I believe. Like
right, because he moves to LA to be with his wife.
Polly. Yeah, that always confused me as a kid. Do you know that John Travolta was supposed to be playing John McClane?
No.
He was the first one in line for it, but he was actually considered a has-been by that point by the studios. So they didn't cast him.
What?
Yeah.
Those are like good look who's talking years for John Travolta.
That is weird, though, because he went on after that to star with Bruce Willis in Look Who's Talking 2, and then later in Pulp Fiction. But Pulp Fiction was like Travolta's comeback thing.
That's right.
He also wasn't really an action
He was
character.
never considered an action
that was the lead into him doing less physical roles.
Yeah, and Willis was huge because he was doing moonlighting at the time.
This is an awesome movie. Let's stop bagging on it. Let's get into the good. What do you guys like about Die Hard?
Almost every single man had the most beautiful head of hair.
Except for Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Oh,
What is
Gruber.
that? All the bad guys are just like
All the Germans are just beautiful flowing hair and
very blonde men.
they're
Oh
not
yeah,
I didn't realize until this moment also that it's a revenge film. Male pattern baldness taking revenge on all these flowy haired
all
Europeans.
the guys with the nice hair.
Oh my god, that's so true.
You know, those guys were all German. Like the actual henchmen, none of them spoke English. They were cast because they looked menacing. That was it. They're all super tall, super German looking, and that's all they had to be.
except for the one dude who like gets a Hershey's bar when he's waiting to shoot down some cops.
That's right.
Al Leong, isn't it? He's in every single action movie.
Action movie of that era, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Big Trouble in Little China. He's in Lethal Weapon. He was in all.
Because he's a very very skilled stunt person.
He is, yeah.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
then I was very surprised that there wasn't some crazy stunt for him to pull off in that film.
Yeah,
no, he
just
really was
wasn't
just
crazy.
guns the whole time.
Yeah.
The cast is awesome in this, right?
Oh, they're
We've got-
amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Hans is one of the best villains in movies. Period.
I love the scene where when Bruce Willis runs into him on the roof, and he pulls out the American accent.
Yeah.
And he's Chad. I think it was Chad. He kind of looks like a Chad with that voice too. It all kind of comes together. That's a great moment.
And what was great too is that he was a villain of gravitas who you could see, even though he wasn't physically imposing, you could see his intelligence arrive when called upon to solve whatever problem was coming, including being face to face with the gunman that he's been hunting, and he has no weapon, and now he has to pretend to be a simple American like coward. Like, oh my gosh, that movie.
Well, and then towards the end when he has the wife and she says, "Oh, you're just like a common thief," and he gets real close, he says, "No, like I'm an incredible thief."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like that's so cool to just have a villain. Like he even plays into the fact that he tries to make it seem like, oh, this is a big political move, and it's like, no, I just want to fuck with everybody.
We're just gonna rob this bearer bonds, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so good.
I forget the actor's name, but I always call him Carl Winslow from Family Matters. But
Reginald Johnson.
Yes, Reginald's awesome. He plays a great cop, and he's just like an everyman, and he's super relatable.
But didn't it mess you up that for the rest of your life you just imagined that he went from the events of Die Hard into Family Matters?
Yeah,
because he plays the police officer there too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Right. In my mind, that's the
cool.
connection, that he's gone, changed his name because he's afraid of the Germans and the retribution, and the sequels of Die Hard prove that that is a thing to fear. And he's under an assumed name, living with his family somewhere else, still trying to be a good cop and a good dad.
Can you imagine if Reginald Johnson was the guy that was in Samuel L. Jackson's role in Die Hard 3? That would have been amazing.
That would have been perfect. But that's not the movie we're talking about, Andy.
Sorry, that's not. I apologize.
We're talking about Die Hard. Bruce Willis and his ability to just be effortlessly cool in close-ups, in tight spaces. It was a special effect all unto its own. And I think that his charisma really is why that movie was such a success. Because you didn't believe that he could do those things, but you believed that he believed he could do those things. And then you believed he could do those things by extension.
I also really bought him talking to himself. I think that's kind of a hard thing to pull off sometimes, you know?
That is hard.
But it felt authentic to me when he's talking to himself. Yeah, it's like, okay.
I think the first time he went think, I was like, well, that's kind of cheesy. But then they did make it a part of his character and a part of him working through everything. And it definitely grew on me. Like probably by the second time he went, think, God damn it, think. Then I was like, yes, you can do it, Bruce Willis.
Yeah, just think real hard. It's the muscle, the only muscle you can flex, because you don't have too many in this movie.
Well, it's weird that it kind of works in his favor, though, that he is kind of an unconventional action hero.
100%.
Because it really takes you by surprise. He does seem like an everyman sort kind of dude. He's, going through issues with his wife, and he hasn't seen his kids and what. Like, there's lots of like normal shit going on, and then he gets caught in this ridiculous situation. And he has the perseverance and, I don't know, the look to get through it. I mean,
whoever's idea it was, wherever that came up in the early script or later by a stunt person, to have him have his shoes off, whoever was on a flight to LA who took their shoes off and gave that screenwriter that idea, they deserve an Oscar.
Yeah, because that glass
taking their shoes off at the right time
always got to me. Every time I watched him pull the fucking glass out of his foot, I was like, oh.
I think my favorite part of this movie, though, is the callbacks. I don't know if any movie does it better, but every time they set something up and you don't realize it's a setup, whether it's him being told about the shoes or her putting the photo down or them talking about the watch, which they don't even show. And then that's how Hans Gruber, like, she undoes the watch, and that's how he falls to his death. It's like they've set up like everything just perfectly throughout the whole thing. And it's, I don't know, to me, it's just like a masterclass of like that kind of storytelling. I watch it and I'm just like inspired. I'm like, this is how to do it. And I think it's incredible.
Well, it was very attentive writing. They were paying attention to everything that they were putting in the script. And I hadn't watched it in a really long time, so there was a lot of details that I had forgotten about. And one of which was when I like realized, oh my God, his wife is the second in command in this entire company that's obviously doing really well. All of a sudden, I got really mad. I was like, why is he being such a piece of shit about this? And then at the end, when he's talking to the cop down on the ground and gets like that really emotional speech about like, tell my wife, it was like, oh, I'm with you again. Like, you get it. Like, yeah, you know that you're being an asshole and you're coming to terms with that and you're trying to make it better. And that's
when he said she's heard me say I love you 1,000 times, but she's never heard me say I'm sorry. I got goosebumps. I was like, that's awesome. Like, he's growing like a little bit, right? And because right in the beginning of the movie, she's inviting him to come back to stay in the guest house, and maybe they can work things out for Christmas, and sort of. And then he just kind of went asshole mode and started talking about all their problems, like right in that exact moment. And I can relate to that too.
Which is what people do. It's good writing.
I can be a little bit immature in my relationship and just be like, you know what? Yeah, you're being nice, but I feel like being shitty.
The moment he brought up, so why are you going by Miss, whatever? And the look on her face, I could feel that. The just like, again, like, oh no, don't do it.
Oh man.
I like the moments of levity too. Just like the movie keeps the tension up like for so long, but they give you like these little breaks, like the police are running through the rose bushes and he gets pricked by the rose bush, or the terrorists are getting ready to shoot and then he like goes and grabs a candy bar. Just like little breaks in the tension that don't take away from the story. I think it's just perfect. It's so well done. This is such an awesome movie.
And also a shout out to that tension building in the scenes where John Mclean is against the glass. He's got the walkie-talkie and he's like giving this pretty commanding performance of hysteria against the glass. Those are hard things to shoot in big banks of glass. We don't see the camera. There are a few places in this movie where the editing misses a step, but that would have been a really hard thing to pull off. He's moving all over. The camera's got to trace him. They're cutting back and forth, and the performance and none of that. Keep in mind the time it's shot, the era it's shot in, shooting around all those reflective surfaces, and I can't see the camera. Hundreds of other movies made in that era, you can see the camera in the curve of the metal or in the reflection of the glass, but not in this one. They did such a great job keeping me in it there.
They used a weird aperture on the lens for this one, so it softened everything that was in the background and kept the actual actors in focus. I think they probably did that to, prevent the reflection piece, because it would have been a pain in the ass.
Now, obviously they couldn't close the whole building. How did they shoot this movie?
It was 20th Century Fox building. They owned it, and they had just moved into it. and so it wasn't actually complete. So they were able to shoot a lot of it because a lot of it just hadn't been used yet. They hadn't even opened some of the floors.
Did they know that before they were shooting, or did they rewrite it to fit?
It was convenience. It was purely a matter of convenience.
So many things in this film are just like the exact right things, the right actors at the right time in the right moments in their career.
It could have gone a lot of different fucking ways. Nick Nolte was the first person to turn down the role. He was the first one offered, and he turned it down. Richard Gere turned down the role. Tom Berenger turned down the role. And then they also considered Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Stallone, and Schwarzenegger, all before they hit Bruce Willis.
I could see Harrison Ford taking the part and it still being a similar movie.
Yeah, Harrison Ford could have.
He has way more of a
Gibson.
boyish charm than Bruce Willis does. I think Bruce Willis brings that, like, I'm a beat cop, that Harrison Ford wouldn't have been able to get that same sort of, I don't know, like deep pain that kind of they have because of the relationship and stuff that we talked about.
I think what it is a Bruce Willis, his 5 o'clock shadow is so believable. You believe that's neglect and not set dressing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you make this exact same movie with Schwarzenegger or Stallone, exactly the same, and it's just not as good. It just you know, and I love those guys. You know, I love.
How would they fit in those little
actors,
in that
but
little
it just doesn't
thing?
have it.
No.
He'd never be able to get through the air vents. He'd have to have extra large air vents.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible.
And we got to shout out John McTiernan, possibly the greatest action movie director of all time, with this and Predator. The guy's the man. He should be getting more work. He's like the best.
What if John McClane versus Predator? That's someone. Where is that movie? Where's that graphic novel? Guys, we should pitch that graphic novel.
All Disney properties now, too.
That's true. Disney owns them all. It's funny.
And we're all thinking about it. Yeah, right. Because then they'd be
So
in the
they
building,
could all cross
and the
over.
Predator would come. And
Then they also own Aliens. Like, you could do it like a mass crazy crossover.
oh, it would be good. It'd be good. So many other good things. What about the very first time I saw an action hero bleed from just hitting his elbow on something was in this movie. Like when he has the fight in all the like aluminum, like the unbuilt office area, and they're getting thrown around and he's smashing around. There's a cut where he falls down and then they cut back and his elbow is like scraped and bleeding. And I know that sounds like a silly little detail, but it actually made the entire film feel like, oh, there will be consequences to all of the things that are happening here, right? And so when his foot is bleeding and he's like, even like many scenes later where he's pounding on the glass from the outside of the building with his foot and blood is smearing and he's wincing from that injured foot. So good.
Well, and that right at the end of the movie when he's finally standing, you know, like pointing a gun at Hans, he's got his wife, and she sees him and she goes, "Oh my God." He just looks so messed up. And it's the thing that just makes it believable.
I'd love to see a time index and a little color swatch of his white shirt turning slowly to that brown by the end. That's what I'd like to see, like a time index of the film, because like somebody in wardrobe earned their goddamn salary.
I know so many stupid facts about this movie. There were 30 of those, and they were all at varying degrees of degradation that they used throughout, so they could grab whichever they needed depending on which scene they were shooting.
That's
So
amazing.
they just have like each tank top is just labeled with the scene that it's from. And they've got like 2 or 3 per. That's
crazy.
amazing.
Yeah, that's organization.
I have a fun fact. Frank Sinatra played John McClane in a movie called The Detective from the 1960s, and he was contractually obligated to be offered the role again. And so he was in his 60s at that point in 1988, and he turned it down. But that would have been, you know.
Can you imagine old Blue Eyes going through with the?
Was it the same character that he played? Because this was based on a novel, right? So
yeah.
Oh, really?
Same character.
That's crazy. I had no idea. Now I want to find out.
I find that super interesting.
I'm surprised he didn't get a cameo role in it.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Just a cowering person, hostage.
He could have been playing piano at the Christmas party.
You know who none of us have brought up yet is the horrible coked up
Elliot? Is it Elliot
coworker that she
or
had.
Ellis?
Oh my
I
god!
want to put him on the bad list because I hate him, but it's good that I hate him. Like he did.
But that's why it
well.
works. That's why it works, though,
Mhm.
because you kind of hate that guy for being such a douchebag, and then when he seems like he's really in control, he's like Hans, Bubby, and that whole bullshit thing, and then Hans shoots him. It's like, yes, that's
tell him, no, tell him you don't
deserved.
know me. Tell him you don't know me. Like that was a tense ass scene.
It totally was, and it worked so good, especially when they drag his body out in front of everybody. Very well done.
You know what else is tense and awesome? Murphy's new Kickstarter. It just is coming out right away here. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, this is an issue number 1 for a new series. We haven't done number 1 since the beginning of 2021, so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be about the whole, like, in our world, there's still Spartans today, and this is going to be the origin of how that started. So we're going back to 200 BC, and we're going to follow the story of the Queen of Sparta, and it's going to be bloody. It's going to be sexy. It is definitely for adults. So check out issue number 1 of Born of Blood on Kickstarter this month.
Awesome. Guys, I think we've given this movie enough love. Let's get into our grades. What's the skinny of Die Hard?
I'm going to give it 28 out of 31 tank tops.
Oh my god! Oh, that's good.
That's good.
That's good.
I'm giving it an A+. I think it's just a great action movie, great story, great script, great actors, great everything. It's awesome. It was hard to pull out those little nitpicks at the beginning of the review here. It's a great movie. And it never gets old. I love rewatching it.
Oh, I love sitting down to watch that again. Glued.
Yeah, I got it 5. You know, yippee-ki-yay motherfuckers out of 5. It doesn't get much better than Die Hard.
I'll give it 1 exploding Nakatomi Tower out of 1 exploding Nakatomi Towers, which is the highest praise I can give it. As action movies go, and I think you should rank action movies with other action movies, it is right up there at the top floor, blown off of this franchise.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Inside Movies. Go out and check out Born of Blood. There's a link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video. And I've included links to all of our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, websites, all that sort of stuff. So give us a follow, and we'll see you next time on Inside Movies. Peace.